I love this film. It has a unique and original concept, but the way in which you approach the story, the shooting, the framing, the color, the cinematography, the composition, it knocked me over. It really blew me away.
I love it when I work with creative people who add things, because things are in my head abstract, and then you connect with other people and they can do wonderful things. This was the case with Christopher, proposing so many beautiful things, finding solution for very hard scenes. This was the case with Amine also. He understood immediately what I meant, but by this feeling, and he translated, in a creative way.
The sound is the seed of the music. First, thinking about the sound palette, and then taking this sound palette and compose wherever we can, we want with it.
It's incredible how much Kaouther had pre-visualized the film and had all those, like each scene had so many references in the art scene, and I had the feeling he spent years and years just putting references into each detail of each image.
When I write, before even starting, the pre-production, in my free time, when I'm, visiting places, watching photos on internet, I always put, what the images that I love in a folder for each project.
You have been a documentary filmmaker, and from what I know, you're also doing documentaries as well, which is always interesting to me when documentary filmmakers move into the fiction realm, and they often can move quite seamlessly because there's an emotional truth to their storytelling.
My first feature film was a mockumentary, so I casted non-actor, so I have this experience which came from documentary, because in documentary also you do casting. So I'm not afraid, of non-actor.
I should mention that this actor was extraordinary in this role as Sam Ali. This was his first fiction feature film that he acted in. And when you premiered at Venice, he won Best Actor Award. I mean, he's extraordinary.
When I decided to give him the part, I called him, in his number to tell him, you will be Sam Ali. And I had a woman on the phone telling me, what do you want from Yahya? Don't call him, who are you? And I was like, okay, I'm sorry, but can I talk to Yahya? It's professional, And he was laughing, it was him, And he was tricking me all the way like this, He had this great possibility.
Wait, he was his own, he pretended to be his own assistant on the phone?
Yeah, exactly. So he had an amazing ability to change his voice, to imitate all different accents. He speaks English very well, and the accent in the movie was his proposition. He proposed me at least 4 accents for Syrian.
I mean, first of all, it's like this performance is totally from the inside out, like completely, and it's smoldering and it's sarcastic. I mean, there's real humor, dark humor in your film. It's a love story, it's a political story, but this restlessness in him. And then of course, he also has the perfect back for the tattoo.
Exactly. I casted the back, also. And so it was a complete actor, he had the perfect back, but the perfect emotions also.
It's very exciting to me as primarily a documentary director to see you work, really fuse these elements of incredible emotional truth and working with somebody who's a first-time performer and working with very seasoned performers to build this story and to really build this world.
Yahya was for me a great actor being non-actor. Putting him, in front of Monica Bellucci, she's, this icon, and both of them, they represent something in the story, He's an outsider to this world of fame, and in the story, world of prestigious art world, and she's the keeper, the gatekeeper of this world. They meet over, him being sneaking to eat as a freeloader, and Monica telling him to go out. So there was something, from the casting, from the reality, that I loved very much, coming into this story.
So now let's talk about the look of the film. It's striking. It's visually sumptuous. It's bold, it's colorful, particularly because you're photographing the body. So there's a sort of medieval and Renaissance painting sort of feel sometimes in the frame where somebody's on one side of the frame and there might be a door frame or there might be a window, but people are separated in their spaces. And so there's this sort of sense of the have and the have-nots, or Sam Ali he says, I'm from the wrong side of the world, and he wants to get to what he thinks is the right side of the world. The opening scene actually is really interesting. If we can start there, it starts essentially on a blank canvas. You're just sort of seeing white. And then you start to see a human form, and you think you're seeing a person, but in this sort of tricks of mirrors in the beginning, in this art gallery, you think you're seeing people, and then you realize it's, as they come into view, it's a mirror image. And then you think you're actually seeing the real people, but it turns out it's another mirror image, and it's a trick. And it sets the tone, I think, of the film of like what's real and what's an illusion.
And since we are in a mise en scène place, which is a gallery or a museum, it's always, there is this kind of fictional aspect to it. You think you are seeing something, and this is art, but you are seeing, there are so many levels and layers. So I wanted to design this first set in this way, so I found this system of parallel mirror, where you can shoot without showing the camera, and we can have this, one shot scene, but framed inside, with those mirrors. I was thinking that it's the first scene, is the opening, and it's also some of the end scene, where we understand everything. So there is a circle, and the character is moving in a circle inside this labyrinth, he's like circling. So it's like a proposition for all what we will see in this story in a formal way.
In the first scene, the white scene, we tried, it's like 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes scene, which is a bit, it's a long scene, but there is no sound. Particularly, it's very empty. The space is empty. It's only music and some steps, and then the steps start coming, and then we have the artwork, and then we tried, for example, in this scene to not to reveal the story, but still to give a bit of mystery, a bit of rhythm, a bit of we thought about it like an operatic opening, like an opera opening.
We had this idea of looking at the tattoo, which is a Schengen visa, that it's very colorful and it has almost like all the colors you would find. So we got the idea of saying, let's have the beginning and the ending be white, which is all the colors together, and then have the film being a defragmentation of white, as like similar to the mirrors. It's also in the color wise, it's also defragmenting light and color. Mm-hmm. So you start with something pure, you end with it, and then you do the whole circle, which is also the journey of Sam, but in a color narration.
And you shot this on the Sony Venice, correct? With anamorphic lenses.
Correct. We shot this on a Sony Venice using Hawk anamorphics, and we chose to shoot on the Sony Venice because we needed a sensor that is very sharp, and we took lenses that are very sharp, but we decided to also have a lot of filters and have a lot of glass and elements, and also in the color correction go against that sharpness. Like a moment that I will never forget is the prep time with Kaouther, who would go and look really into each reflection, almost gluing her eye to the reflections to find where you would get a double or like a new image. So just by looking at her, I had the feeling we need a camera that is much smaller, and the Sony Venice is a camera you can detach. So it helped us a lot get into those corners where you could get reflections you wouldn't get with a bigger camera.
So with your Sony Venice, you had a matte box with lots of different filters in it, depending on the scene?
Correct.
How many filters, like what was the max number of filters you were using in any given scene?
between 4 and 7, 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I hope at some time you can do like some kind of a cinematography course just in terms of this film. At one point we see the main character Sam Ali go through, I mean, it's wonderful. He's going through this empty museum, gallery after gallery, and he's got this incredible blue silk gown kind of flowing behind him. And it's shot from behind and it's kind of a wide lens. It's beautiful. And I noticed that as he moved into Europe, there's a lot more blues and greens and like his hotel room and what he's wearing. And so I guess the question that I have is like, in terms of thinking about the colors and thinking about the textures, how detailed did you guys get? And what did these folders look like?
We had a Google Drive, a huge folder with every scene, with all the references, all what every member of crew should do for this scene, should prepare, should propose. So it was a shared Google Drive folder where everybody can go and see the work of other, to understand all the scene from all the sides, what the first ID should do, what the set designer should do, everybody. So, and I put photos, the texture, everything. And Christopher also was putting references, and we were talking about this all the time till deciding, in which set we'll shoot, which color we will adopt. So it was, this kind of process. Why I did this? Because I had a very big, ambitious vision for this movie, but we hadn't a lot of budget. It was a 2 million budget movie, which is, which is big for me. But I think for European movie or even American movie, it's a very small budget. And I knew that I'll not have a lot of time to decide, in the set or something like this.
I have the feeling you were full of so many precise ideas that I was just there to try to make the best come out of, visually out of your ideas, which is often not the case, because often it's more about really finding the language from scratch without, with a director who doesn't conceive the film visually. But with Kaouther, it was completely the opposite. It was a director who was obsessed by frames and by each detail and the image.
And yet when you're in a particular, I mean, you really world build. So when you're in a particular environment, if it's those blues in the hotel room or in the gallery, these amazing blue lights that are coming down, and your main character is like literally shimmying under these blue lights or stepping over them and sort of exploring the space before the crowds come in to, to gaze at him. In this really voyeuristic way. Every moment, it's its own little sort of mini world where it's either these rich reds and oranges, tapestry of that, or like these cool blues and greens. But as a whole, I think it's quite seamless. And it's just a delight. It's a delight to just be pulled along in these visual moments. It's also a delight because, as I said, there's so much humor in it, and it's a love story at the heart of it, because he's trying the entire time to get to his girlfriend who's in Europe.
We shot a part of this movie in a fine art museum in Brussels. And since we hadn't a lot of freedom, since it's a museum and you have all this precious work of art, and they have a fight in the museum, all this. So we set this dark part you were mentioning with the lights in Tunis. So we built our museum, and we had to conceive it, which was great for me, to work with Christopher on this installation, to work about the lights, to think about it as, an underground place in this prestigious museum. And it was only an old building for doing wine, in a very small village out of Tunis. If you shift the camera to the door, you'll see some sheep, crossing the street or something like this,
The sound mix is just as complex it's really gorgeous, and it's a gorgeous score, which we'll talk about, original score. But one of the things is that Sam Ali, your main character, is often shot, because he is in a box, he's often shot in a box where he's Skyping with somebody, or when they start to tattoo him, you know, we sort of see it through the, you know, the eyepiece of the tattoo artist. At one point we see him, not him, but the image of him through a camcorder. Like, he's in a lot of boxes, like he's Skyping with his girlfriend, he's Skyping with his mother. And you did something that was very effective, where you would have these echoes of the way that we experience on Skype or FaceTime, where there are these sort of echoes, and it's very faint underneath a lot of the conversation. And then in the gallery, this hushed, you know, sort of, you know, there's a reverence in which people approach, you know, a fancy museum, a fancy gallery. You can hear a pin drop, but then when you start to hear the public come in, where they're going to be peering at him, and just the coughs and the shuffles. And so it's, again, this sort of sense of what is the real person? What is, you know, sort of what is the truth? And then the mirage of it. And you have that both visually, but you also have it in this auditory way.
The image, we see it, but the sound, it's unconscious in a way, you know, it shapes our vision, how we see. So it's more vicious, you know, and when you know this, you know the power of sound and what you can do with this. So thank you for noticing all these small things, and I hope one day you'll see it in a movie theater, because it's even better.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Or
can
you have your
imagine. I
own
mean,
private.
this could have been amazing to see. I didn't get to see it in a movie theater, but it's certainly, it's all the craft, sort of every moment of the craft is all there. This is a really ambitious film. It's sometimes cheeky, it's funny, it's colorful, it's bold. And so there are moments the score is really bold, like these bold strings or bold vocals, these operatic voices, but then sometimes it's incredibly reserved and muted for those moments. I mean, it's a perfectly calibrated and honestly, like, recorded and mixed score. So I would love to hear about the collaboration and what you talked about in terms of the kind of sounds you wanted and the kinds of accents and the mood that you wanted to create.
I must say that I had the chance to work in this movie beginning in the script, because actually when a composer is hired, he's hired on a final step of doing a film. But with Kaouther, we worked on the script. So we read the script, and we had a lot of conversations about how could the music help telling the story, because sometimes maybe dialogue is not needed and the score could tell the emotional instead of having a dialogue, or a time lapse. The music could play the time lapse. And so I went to a tattoo shop, several tattoo shops, and I just knocked the door, and the tattoo guy thought I'm gonna have a tattoo. I said, no, I'm not gonna have a tattoo. Just please put the machine, and I'm gonna record. So I recorded a lot of tattoo machine sounds, and I got back here in my studios, and I started playing with them, putting them into synthesizers, reverbs, delays, whatever other effects, to try to create musical instruments out of this tattoo machine sound, which is normally just a zzz. So the idea was like to take elements from the film and to try to build out the score from those elements. The sound or music is kind of this emotional glue to all what Sam Ali is leaving. And then throughout all the fun, the music was thought like that, like giving something, but then stepping back, then giving something, then stepping back, then trying to how to say, to follow the journey of the character.
Mm-hmm. It's really well put. And yeah, I mean, I sat up in my seat, you know, when I first watched that opening scene, because it's so striking, and the music is so striking. And it's just this moment where you're like, oh, I'm going to be going on this mysterious journey. And this is a film that is being made by a very visionary and sure-footed filmmaker. I had no idea who the filmmaker was actually when I watched it. I just was like, well, this is interesting. The Man Who Sold His Skin. I'll watch this. And because I think in part, Kaouther, because of your vision and your incredible attention to detail and just tenacity, but then really bringing in your craftspeople early, having these references and really having your composer come in early, it's a treat to go on this journey on The Man Who Sold His Skin.
What do you think? You're a genie?
Jeffrey Godefroy turns worthless objects into works that cost millions and millions of dollars just by signing them.
You want my soul?
I want your back.
عشان الشغل بأوروبا.
كتير منيح.
شغل مع فنان تعرفت عليه هون. هو فيه يظبط لي الفيزا وكل شيء بس يعني أنا لسه ما.
اللقم.
تعال.
With my latest work, I am exploring a new realm. Now he can travel around the world.
عموما بس كنت أقول لك إنه وصلت. This work of art bears the signature of the devil.
هذا شغلك يا سان؟
فيني أسألك ليش جوزتيني؟ المفروض أنا وياكي نقلب صفحة يعني.
4 million, ladies and gentlemen. You're a free man, Sam.
No, I'm a dead man.
Eller keser demedin mi dinli